Thinking Out Loud with Dave Palmer. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. And what does St. Thomas Aquinas have to say about providence or fate? To help break that down for us, we've got, of course, Dave Palmer. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Keith. Good to be with you. Yeah, I thought I'd actually tie this into the car raffle. St. Thomas Aquinas did not have anything to say about car raffles in the Summa, but I find it very intriguing. And actually, Tim was the one that suggested this topic to me, and I thought, this is a really cool topic. And I'll give you a little bit of background about where I'm kind of coming from with this. Is that we've been promoting this car raffle since the beginning of January. 2 weeks from Friday, somebody's going to win a Mercedes-Benz GLB 250 in polar white, right? Got all my talking points down. And I guess you can't help but think, how does this work in the big picture? Like, is it predetermined by God who's going to win, in God's providence? Or is it just absolutely by chance that God just takes a step back and says, I'm just going to let everything kind of play itself out. I'm not going to, be involved in this at all. Or is it kind of somewhere in between? And I know in all my years of selling tickets is that I've seen some interesting, purchasing behavior, I guess you could say. This last weekend, I was at a college university, and this young college-age student came up, and she very confidently told me she wanted 7 tickets, right? And she didn't say that she was getting it because it's the perfect number, but I kind of assumed that's what she was doing, because 7 is kind of an unusual number to get. And then she asked me about, if I win and you call me and I don't call you right back, so she was already planning on winning. She was very confident, right. And I thought it was kind of cool, And I've had people that have had their tickets blessed. If there's a priest standing there, they'll say, Father, will you bless my tickets? I've seen some people say, I want every 7th ticket, and and I trust they're not being superstitious, but they're just doing something to kind of, move the odds in their favor. And so I thought we would, apply Thomistic philosophy to this whole balance between, God's omniscience and providence and fate and chance and how it all plays out. So that Friday morning, when in Midland, Texas, and they have that bin and the hand goes in and pulls out a ticket, how does it all work? So that's the plan. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, no, I'm sure everybody's all ears too, especially those who have already purchased a ticket.
Yeah. So yeah, and of course we want people to buy tickets, and so like I say, what we want to do is keep a number of sometimes seemingly incompatible things in balance with each other. Like for example, God's omniscience. God knows everything, and God knows who's going to win the car raffle on Friday morning. He knows who's going to win next year. He knows who's going to win, 10 years from now. And so all that, in a sense, you say, well, gosh, if he knows that, then it's a done deal. It's already set, right? But that's in his mind because he's outside of time. And then you also have to take into account a providence. And providence is the ordering of all things as pre-existing in the divine mind. And so God has all things in the world ordered in such a way that ultimately they're going to be according to his divine will. So that sounds very deterministic as well, right? But the Catholic Church does not believe in sheer determinism. This is something that people like the philosophers, the Epicureans, believed in, that everything is just a matter of absolute fate. It's all predetermined. The Stoics were that way. Everything, you just kind of go with the flow, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about that. It's a very common trend within thought, historically. And so then you add into all that what we absolutely know, that we have free will. And I don't think anybody who has purchased tickets or who will purchase tickets believes that they were forced to do so. I think so. So we know that there's an element of free will, that nobody's forced to buy tickets. And so how do we take all these things, God's omniscience, providence, fate, chance, free will, and bring it all together to apply Thomistic philosophy to the GRN car raffle. Okay, so that's the challenge. And interestingly, Thomas Aquinas in the Summa has a whole question with many articles about providence, and clearly he believes in providence. He believes that all things, are in pre-existing in the divine mind, and God is guiding things to, a proper end. And he also, interestingly, has a question about fate. And he asks the question, is there such a thing as fate? And how does he answer? He says, yes, there is. There is fate. And he defines it as the ordering of second causes to the effects foreseen by God. Okay, so have another sip of coffee and then I'll read that again. Okay, the ordering of second causes to the effects foreseen by God. So what he's doing is he's balancing these two things. He's saying, okay, God knows all things, God guides all things, but the key is that God in his love and providence allows for what's called secondary causes. Okay, he allows things to happen below him, I guess you could say, contingently with free will. And so he gives certain creatures like us free will to do things that even seem to go against his will, right? But then in the end, all things are going to conform to his will. So you have to see this big picture and then the micro picture of all these things happening ultimately comes to his will. But he's going to allow, contingencies and free will. And somebody may buy a ticket or not buy a ticket. They may get it prayed for. They may do this. But in the end, he's ordering it, but he's allowing things to happen in a way that's not outside his will, but that's not absolutely predetermined. Okay, so does that make sense? It's a very delicate kind of balancing game, and you can't be like superstition, for example. You don't want to fall into superstition to think that because I do something, because I bought these particular tickets, or because I got them blessed, I'm going to win, right? That would be superstitious. You don't want to fall into strict determinism where, it's already determined, either an optimist would say it's already determined and I'm going to win, or it's already determined and somebody else is going to win. And so what's the point, right? And then also, I don't think you can fall in just to complete absolute randomness, where this is just totally by chance. God, has taken a, he's sitting back and just kind of outside spectator watching this, and where he's not really concerned at all about it. So that's the balance, okay? And I know it sounds confusing, but I think ultimately we have to just do our part. And I'll tell you what I think the response is. But I know I've said a lot, and I'll just give you a chance. Do you have any thoughts on all of that?
Well, it kind of reminds me of, I remember people saying, "Oh, I've got the lucky ticket," but from what it sounds like, there's no luck really when it comes down to it. There's no such thing as luck, right?
Yeah, when you talk about luck, you have to kind of put it into that whole system of saying that because my ticket has 2 7s on it, or because my ticket, has the numbers of my birthday, that would be superstition. That's where, because I did something, I'm moving the hand of God. But at the same time, you might say, I prayed, and I totally submitted to God's will, and maybe God really believes I need this Mercedes, and so I think if you want to say I'm lucky, obviously when on that morning 2 weeks from Friday, when Lisa or Sammy or whoever puts their hand into that bin, and your ticket is pulled out among all those other ones, it's hard to think that there's not some element of luck there, right. As long as you don't fall into the superstition, or like, just because I said those 14 novenas, I won. You still have to allow for God's providence, and ultimately God's in charge. So my solution, Keith, is that the thing that we have that irrational creatures don't have is that we have the ability to respond to God through our free will. So when people buy the tickets, they're responding through their free will to support something like the Guadalupe Radio Network. And they're buying it because it's a response out of charity, right? And so they're doing it freely and not superstitiously, and not because they know they're going to win, and also not that they absolutely don't think there's any chance that they can win. But that's where you kind of put it in God's hands and say, God, you're in control. I've done my part. I've responded in faith, in charity, virtuously. I bought my tickets. And at that point, it's done, and my tickets are going to go in that bin. And if there's an element of chance or an element of, then God's will be done at that point. So I think there has to be a certain level of just sit back and say, God, at this point, I've done what I've done. Now you do what you do, and we're going to let let it play out.
Take the wheel. The Mercedes-Benz wheel.
But take the bin wheel, right?
That's right. And real quick, for those listening on Catholic Spirit Radio or Aquinas Communications, you also could win the car. Like, it's not just for those listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. And that goes out for all of those on X or YouTube or Rumble. You can certainly put your name in there and maybe pay it forward, buy a ticket for somebody else, and potentially win the car. So, although I have to say asterisks, if you are in South Africa, that probably is, producer Tim is shaking his head no. I don't think we would want to ship that. That might be a lot. It took how much to send a rosary? Yeah, it's a lot. So make sure you're in the United States. Let's just say that. But thank you so much, Dave, for bringing this up. It really does tie in well to that car raffle.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's cooperation. We're cooperating with God, and let it play out, right?
That's awesome. Yes, and for those out there wanting to hear more about St. Thomas Aquinas and philosophy, highly recommend checking out Back to the Father, and that's on Fridays at 1 p.m. Central on GRN Online's YouTube channel. Just search GRN Online and you'll find it. Last Friday, Dave talked about the habits of the human person according to Aquinas. Very interesting stuff. But thank you so much, Dave. And that is it for the first hour of Morning Joy. Can you believe it? It went by so quickly. My goodness. But if you are unable to watch the remainder of Morning Joy in the second hour, just know you can watch or consume it really on social media. You just need to search Morning Joy Radio and you'll find us. But if this is us parting ways, make sure to make it a joyful day. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern. But if you're still hanging with us, we'll be right back after a quick break here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.